I thought it was a byproduct of a couple things. I thought our defense got off the field quick. I thought that offensively, um, well, you could say a couple things. I think one, the University of Colorado, and playing very hard on defense, and then the other, the swirling wind made it difficult to move the ball, so we were able to move it up and down the field slowly. You know, they weren't big chunks and explosives, and so then, but you know, I mean, the biggest thing is we had more plays. You know, the stats I do value. We had more plays, we had more first downs, and we had a higher third down conversion. So, and I think that was one of the biggest things is our defense did very good on third down, stopping them on third down, and then we did a pretty, not a great, but pretty good job of converting on third down. We were a little over 50%, and I think that allowed us to keep drives going, and then, of course, time ticks off. But, you know, it's not one of those things like time of possession. So often those people that value time of possession, you know, they just sit, you know, they just sit behind the center and pretend they're going to tickle his ass, and maybe they are and maybe they're not, and just wait for the clock to tick by, you see. And then, but that's nothing really football-wise. I mean, you're just pretending you're a smart football coach if you're doing that. I mean, because if what you're doing in practice has any value whatsoever, you'd probably be a little more focused on executing plays or, you know, that sort of thing. But, you know, sitting there dramatically looking around in space and going towards the center and away from the center and pretending that somehow, you know, you've revolutionized something smart. No, to me, it's entirely idiotic. So.
And then I think coming into the game, you guys were top 5 in the country in scoring plays, scoring drives of 10 plays or longer. How demoralizing can it be when you have a long drive like that and cap it with a touchdown, take a bunch of time off the clock, kind of in the process of doing that?
Well, you want the ball. I mean, you want to keep the ball away from them, and then, but you know, and my problem is that the time of possession doesn't always reflect that. A number of plays does. I mean, number of plays is real. A number of plays is okay. You have to play 40 plays more than we do. Well, yeah, you really had to play them, you know, and you really did get hit on those additional 40 plays. You really had to run those additional 40 plays. But you know, the sustained drives, yeah, I like that. I mean, because that suggests a level of consistency. That suggests that we have a level of consistency that, you know, that we're all kind of striving for, the ability to, you know, you did it once, now you did it 3 times in a row. Can you do it, you know, if you can do it over 10, I think that's pretty good, and we got to keep getting better than that, you know.
Would you say that's a direct correlation with, like, avoiding negative plays is how you're able to sustain drives?
I think that helps. I think avoiding negative plays. I think that yeah, we avoided negative plays, which I think was extremely helpful. But I do feel like that, you know, we're reasonably consistent. I thought it was, again, I thought the conditions were a little tough in Boulder for both sides, but you know, you battle through it.
How do you kind of prepare for those conditions? I know everyone talks about elevation, but there was more so wind that was kind of affecting the passing game. Now, something that you just kind of have to go through during warm-ups, or like a gardener has to kind of feel it out, or how do you go about that?
Well, elevation I really don't count. You know, kind of either you're in shape or you're not. Your mouth dries out a little quicker there, but you know, what are we, 3,000 feet or a little over? So we're within striking distance anyway. And then I don't worry about that. I don't worry about snow. I don't worry about rain. The biggest nuisance is wind. And even though I don't really care for it when we're having practice, we do have the opportunity to practice in wind around here. So it's not like, you know, we're caught without any preparation if it winds, if the wind blows, because we do get to practice in wind. And if you're in a place that doesn't get wind, that's a problem, because you can't duplicate wind. You can duplicate a lot of things, but you can't you know, you can get the ball all wet for the rain thing. You know, the snow's really not that big of a problem if the footing's good. You know, but you can't duplicate wind. And, you know, so even though it's a nuisance, we do have the opportunity to practice in it. Now, this was swirling wind, not just a flat wind or a headwind. This was swirling wind, which was changing directions kind of constantly, and you can even see on film the ball do some funny things. Yeah, that's. I mean, you want to have a little wind because you can't duplicate it if you don't. And then you play somebody that does, and you're screwed. You know.
Playing on natural grass an adjustment for you guys? I know you guys play in practice and Louisville. Play games occasionally throughout the season on grass, but is that an adjustment you guys have to make?
It didn't seem to be, and it's a different type of grass than at Stanford, for example. It didn't seem to be, and we thought about that because we have some grass fields out there on the back 40 behind the rec center that we considered practicing at, but figured it wasn't worth the trouble. That we were good.
Other questions for Coach in the room? Okay, questions on the phone line for Coach Leach.
Hi, Coach. This is hello.
Go ahead, Nick.
This is Nick of AP. Can you talk a little bit about the total contributions of James Williams to this year's team? What he's managed to accomplish overall.
I think he's done a good job. The one thing about James that I think's pretty good is he can do everything you ask a running back to do: rush the ball, catch the ball, and block. In our offense, it's very important that he's able to do all three, and James can. James has done a good job making people miss when he's on space. But good, solid player, and I think his play and Max's play complement each other.
Other questions on the phone line for Coach?
All right, well, that's it then.
Room. Any questions for Coach?
Mike, the one long catch and run by Dez, is that an example of what you're trying to get out of him?
Yeah, I actually thought that play kind of broke the game open. I know it wasn't a score, and a lot of times, you feel like a score or something is what breaks it open. I really thought that kind of broke things open. Hit Patman on a hitch, and he ran up the sideline and shoved some people around as he went, and but he's kind of a strong, powerful guy, stronger than he realizes, as we've talked about. But he's getting better and better as he plays. So
there were a handful of plays in that game where Gardner had all day,
right,
and nothing came out of it. Was there a common denominator on those plays?
Well, I think there's sometimes it was really good coverage on their part. Sometimes, and we did protect decent. Sometimes one guy'd get beat somewhere. I also thought, he could have triggered a little quicker on some of them. And again, conditions were tough because of the wind and the communication, but as good as he played, I don't think it's one of his best games. So
last year, Khalil Tate had a pretty productive day against you guys. What makes him dangerous to defend?
Well, first of all, I think our defensive plan is part of what made him dangerous. I think we had some self-inflicted wounds, but the other thing is I think that that he's good with his feet. He can throw and he can run both, and then what they were doing offensively kind of set that up and complemented it. So now it's kind of a combination of both, but he's definitely dangerous with his feet, and then so it was tough that day, but none of that has anything to do with this week. So
is there an added stress facing like a mobile quarterback like Tate, or what kind of?
Yeah, we've had some others, and he's a good example. We've had some others that are pretty mobile. The guy this week wasn't immobile. Got Cal, both of theirs are pretty mobile, So yeah, you have to tend to them. And then also it depends their inclination to run, and Tate'll run a little more.
What self-inflicted wounds in particular caused that to happen last year?
I didn't think we adjusted very good, and I also think that we were pretty much in a situation where if one guy screwed up, they're going to get a lot of yards, and I think that puts too much stress in order to successfully defend them. I mean, because you're talking about any given play, there'll be three guys, say, at the point of attack, and for all three of them to play perfect every time, I think is pretty challenging. So I think we approached it aggressively, which I liked at the time, but I didn't think it was the best approach in hindsight.
Obviously, you guys are all about Arizona this week, but everybody around here knows what's around the corner with Washington. You've mentioned this team's ability to focus on whatever task you put in front of them. How important is it in a week like this before a big rivalry game, especially with so much on the line?
Well, it's critical we just focus on Arizona, so it's about as simple as that, really. So.
Why do you think your team's going to be able to just focus on Arizona?
Well, if we don't, we won't play well against Arizona. I mean, I think we will, and it's necessary, and we need to try to impart that message the best we can. But this week there's the only game we play is Arizona, and there's nothing more important than Arizona. And anybody that does anything other than that is wrong. And you're just looking for. You're looking for a lack of preparation and not putting yourself in the best position to be successful. And so we have to just focus on Arizona. So,
Mike, when you look at Kevin Sumlin's, how much of your philosophy do you see there?
Well, there's definitely some plays that over the years that I know has borrowed from our general philosophy and things like that. There's some. Played against Kevin quite a bit when you consider he was assistant on various staffs, things like that. That we had in common, both A&M and Oklahoma and stuff. And then, so I know him real well, and he's a fantastic guy, and. And we do share a lot of the same philosophies. So, yeah, I think he does a good job. I always think he had. Actually, first time I met Kevin Sumlin was at Washington State. He was at Purdue, but see, he'd been at Washington State at one time. And then Mike Price had the one-back clinic at Washington State, and so walked through the door, and there's Kevin Sumlin, who was at Purdue, and Mazzoni, I think, was at Auburn at the time. And they'd known each other from somewhere. Anyway, so, yeah, there they are. So you got to meet them in person that day. How about that? And so then now I was a little bit more thrilled to meet Mike Price because he's a head coach and had been to the Rose Bowl and everything. But I was delighted to meet Noel and Kevin as well.
That would have been in the late 90s?
It was, I can almost tell you. Let me think. So it was let's see. So figure this out. Let's see. It was in 90. Probably 96, maybe.
Was that your first?
It was probably my second year at the University of Kentucky. Whatever that is. It was my second year at University of Kentucky. I was at Kentucky at the time.
That was your first time visiting Pullman ever, too?
Yes. Yep.
Has Kevin told you about his first, the 2 years he's been here as a GA and that experience?
A little, just sort of in passing. I mean, we've all had a lot of stops, so then, talk about all of them sometimes, So.
Coach, your team has caught the national spotlight, and between game day coming to Pullman earlier this year and you putting on the mustache after the game on Saturday.
Well, I didn't really put it on, but I was a victim of a cruel joke, but no, go ahead.
You know, it's giving other people the perspective that this is a fun program to be a part of. How important is that for you as the head coach?
Yeah, I think it's important. I mean, you're around each other all the time. You're around each other all the time, and you're around each other just crazy hours, and so and you better have a good time together. And then I think the other thing that's fantastic is you really get to know folks that are from different backgrounds than yours, and gain an understanding, and it really broadens your horizons as far as stuff you know about, stuff you learn about, and just all the different situations people come from. So I think that's fantastic. And then the other thing is obviously on camera people are a little more guarded, but no, I mean in the locker room and if you in the locker room downtown, if you see them around town, all that, I mean everybody's really having a good time. And this is a very tight team, and I think that that has helped us to play well.
Why is it that you think some coaches are afraid or at least apprehensive to show kind of more of their personalities? I mean, you obviously have no problem showing kind of who you are and a little bit of your personality. Why do you think some coaches?
Well, because you're kind of a pincushion with the media. I mean, the thing is, no matter what you say, I mean, somebody's going to stab you. And so you're trying to get stabbed as little as possible, and some people are more guarded about that, and and perhaps have a difficulty ignoring it, and then but they feel vulnerable as far as everybody's trying to do the best they can. There's not a coach that's in the country that's trying to lose or searching for extra motivation. They're already loaded with motivation because they work hours upon hours upon hours upon hours. Now, things may be imprecise, and their team may not play as well as they'd like. They may call or coach plays that are wrong, but everybody's, with rare exceptions, giving full effort, and then to be scrutinized, is I think. Difficult for some, but I figure if I say what's on my mind, there's less to keep track of, and then but occasionally you got to fight back a little bit, so.
You're pretty good at ignoring us?
Yeah, better than average. I really think that. I think I'm reasonably good at it, to be perfectly honest. The other thing, though, I was in the media for 2 years. I had a national radio show, and me and Jack Root, and then was with CBS, for a year. And I've never believed that the media's malicious. There's a few bad apples. There's a few bad apples out there. I've never believed they're malicious, but they're almost like realtors. They just want change. They don't good news. They'll report good news, but they just want something to happen. Nothing happened today. I mean, they don't want that. I mean, good's fine. I mean, they like good. Some good happens, sure they'll report it. Some bad happens, they'll report that too. So.
Last chance for questions on the phone line for Coach.
All right, that's it. Okay, what do we got?
Demi, go ahead.
All right, well, this week's fan question of the week is kind of a fun one. If there was an all-out brawl between all the Pac-12 head coaches, who would be the last coach standing?
Shoot, I don't know. Trying to think through them. Well, based on their players, Kyle would be. I mean, those guys hit you as hard as anybody in the conference. Plus, he's in good shape. Okay, so let's see. We got Kevin. And I'm definitely not gonna. Then Herm Edwards is in great shape. He's in great shape, although we don't play them. Let me think. Am I missing anybody? And I don't really care if they get ticked off. Because actually, privately, I think I would, but we're going to be more modest than that. I'm going to say Kyle or Herm for sure. Kyle or Herm.
Why is that?
Well, they're both in shape. For a while, I mean, simple. At this age, if you're in shape, you got a chance. They're both in great shape. You know, you look. I mean, they're both in shape. They both exercise. They, and then, pretty good and successful. Background as far as conditioning, all that, and then both defensive guys, where their defensive players play tough and physical. So, yeah, I think I'd go with Kyle or Herm.
So you kind of think endurance is more so the biggest factor?
Well, you got now. If you could stay away from him, you'd still be standing. I don't know. Maybe one of the distance runner-looking guys. I don't know. I'd have to. That's a tough question.
What about like size, like a guy like a Mario Cristobal at Oregon?
Well, you don't want to get tied up with him. You don't want to let him get his hands on you because he is big and he's got long levers. You don't want him to get those things on you. He would be dangerous, though. There's no question. Formidable for sure.
Anything else for Coach?
Coach, hypothetically speaking, if Kookstock were a music festival here in Pullman, which musical acts would you want to play it?
I just heard the Doors driving in, so that'd be a good one. You'd have to resurrect a few people. What bands? Well, I don't know. Can't say I've won, but Leonard Skinner's, Jimmy Buffett, Neil Young, Grateful Dead, Bob Dylan, Bad Company, Jethro Tull, Eagles. I know I'm missing some really good ones.
You've mentioned Marshall Tucker.
Marshall Tucker Band. Radney Foster, a guy that a little more obscure that I listened to before games and used to listen to before every Texas A&M game. Robert Earl Keen, definitely. We have to have him. Toby Keith. You could have Willie there just to kind of supervise the country western crowd, you know. I don't know. There's a bunch of good ones. It's it's hard to think of all of them. You know, when there used to be a radio in front of you, and then every time you hopped in the car, it was almost, I think, a better deal than having to program it all on your phone and mess around with your phone. Because I try to get away from my phone if it's not a phone call.
You tweeted about Burt Reynolds last night and his, I guess because of the mustache that you put on.
Yeah, well, this whole thing, obsession with that, I guess kind of reminds me of Burt Reynolds, you know. Yeah.
Why?
Well, because first of all, Gardner sort of looks like Burt Reynolds a little bit. And then there is kind of a Smokey and the Bandit vibe with the whole thing. And then he may not even know who Burt Reynolds is, and it wouldn't surprise me a bit if he doesn't. But I don't know. It just came to mind, you know, really.
Do you think Burt Reynolds has a pretty good mustache?
It was pretty good when I saw him. I met him once. So he would, you know, had a place in Tallahassee, and his godson was on the team at Valdosta State. So he'd come up there for spring football, and we had several Florida State coaches' kids on the team, and so they'd come up, and there'd be Burt Reynolds. Of course, all the ladies wanted to meet him and everything, and in the midst of it, we're down there trying to have a spring practice or spring scrimmage. So. Yeah, but I don't know him or anything. Just oh, you guys do a great job. You know, it's like one of those things.
Do you think he has like one of the all-time greatest mustaches, or?
It's kind of memorable, though, you know. I mean, because I've been thinking about this because there's a lot of mustaches out there, and why is, why is Gardner's taken hold in the fashion that it has? And it is a little curious to me. But part of it, I do think his face carries a mustache well, and then and just I remember, and some of it's a little generational, but. Growing up, that was, you always heard about Burt Reynolds' mustache,
As a follow-up to the Pac-12 Battle Royale, not to get you in trouble, but which coach would you least fear?
No, I can't say that. No. We already went down that hole way too far. All right.